Hey, soul survivors, we have a very interesting topic. We're going to talk about the criminality and also how the narcissist can enlist flying monkeys. Sometimes that's us into criminal activities, some things that are against our morals. How do they do that? Who are some famous psychopaths and also narcissists? Which is the difference between narcissism and psychopathy? Sometimes you can have comorbidity, but narcissists, they can use other people for criminal activities in many different ways. And it can include manipulation, things from coercion, intimidation, and some of the most common ones that they will utilize to enlist others is manipulation. Now, a narcissist is skilled at manipulating others just to get what they want. They can use flattery, charm, even threats to persuade others to engage in criminal activities on their behalf. Sometimes you don't even know what is going on. So I thought I would address this. It is very common. Not all narcissists are criminals, but they have that lack of impulse control. And they can also use coercion. They can use this through threats. Sometimes it's intimidation. And this feels like the other person is being forced to comply with the narcissist's wishes. They can even use blackmail or extortion. And this is used to coerce others into participating into some criminal activity. So you can see it at the workplace, you can see it at home, you can see it in love relationships, and they can even take advantage of vulnerable individuals who are in need of things such as money or other resources. So sometimes it appears that they're helping, but it's just to take what they can. You see that sometimes too with people who help somebody, but it's to get the inheritance, to get the person to put the money into the narcissist's name. So they might offer to pay these individuals to engage in criminal activity, sometimes if they needed a lot of money, knowing that they're unlikely to refuse because they're just in a desperate state. So instead of helping the person, they're utilizing them for their own gain, and that person can often be at risk for criminal charges. So narcissists, they can lie to others about the nature of the criminal activity that they are asking them to engage within. And they can say things like, you know, give some false support to why it is legal, and they can downplay the risks involved or even make false promises about the rewards. So sometimes if you're thinking, I don't know, is this worth risking, they can tell you, you know, you're going to make so much money and you might risk it for that, but then they don't even pay. So you're just at risk for no payout. And they will actively seek out individuals who are already engaged in criminal activities and recruit them to work for them. They see them as an easy target. They can just make things worse and worse. They can ask the individual to go above and beyond. And they can even seek out individuals who have special skills or knowledge that they can use to their advantage. So not all narcissists are criminals and not all criminals are narcissists. But how does a narcissist gain control over people against their morals? And it's a variety of different manipulative tactics, such as love bombing. We all know about that. Love bombing kind of creates that sense of euphoria within the victim, and it makes them feel like they finally found someone who truly understands them. So it's not always a love relationship, but we all want some validation in life. We all want to be loved or understood, and the narcissist just puts up a front. They also use that gaslighting to make the victim doubt their own memories or perceptions. And they can insist that their victim is misremembering events or saying things that aren't there. So if somebody's starting to feel cautious, they get reassured, they start bringing it up, and then they get gaslit into believing that their sense of reality, which is a true reality, is wrong. So over time, this victim starts to begin to doubt their own judgment. They start to rely heavily on the narcissist for guidance because they feel like everything I think is wrong. And they start feeling a need for the narcissist to clarify everything. And that's when they can use coercion. Isolation. They can try to isolate their victim from friends and family members who could provide support, or even just that reality check. Like, are you sure about this? Or don't you realize that? And they can insist that the victim spend all their time with the narcissist. And they can also become jealous of any other relationships the victim has. So they might utilize certain tactics to get the person to spend more time with them. And it just starts where the family members and friends kind of become more and more distant. And narcissists can even use things like triangulation. And this is used to create competition or even jealousy between the victims and other people. They can start to talk about other people in such a way that makes the victim feel insecure or even inferior, or they may even make the victim compete for their attention. So when they start pushing you away, it's because they want kind of like that abandonment thing. They want you to come closer, so they push you away to where you're not good enough, and then you try to prove yourself. And the threats that the narcissist can use can be anything from physical harm, emotional harm, public embarrassment to control their victim. They can say they're going to release some photos or some information that might be embarrassing or devastating to the victim. And they can also threaten to leave or withdraw their affection if the victim doesn't comply with their wishes. And we get in such a state that we forget about our self-worth because we're so focused on making the narcissist happy. We forget about making ourselves happy, and they just take and take. That's when things start falling apart, when they start taking. So what are some of the most famous diagnosed narcissistic personality criminals? Not psychopaths, but we have Bernie Madoff, and he was a financier who ran a Ponzi scheme that defrauded thousands of people out of billions of dollars. He was diagnosed. Now, these are all people, according to the web, that have been, because I don't know him personally, but that have been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder by a court-appointed psychiatrist during his trial. We have Conrad Black, who is a former media mogul and was convicted of a fraud and obstruction of justice back in 2007. And he has been described as having that grandiose sense of self-importance and even that lack of empathy. You see that lack of empathy again. We have Martha Stewart. Now, she is a businesswoman and television personality who was convicted of insider trading in 2004. So she has been described as having a strong need for control and an inflated sense of self-importance. So she's high on the narcissism scale. Scott Peterson, he was convicted of murdering his pregnant wife, who was Lacey Peterson, back in 2004. He was described as having a lack of empathy and a sense of entitlement. Ted Bundy, notorious serial killer, and he murdered at least 30 young women the year I was born, in the 1970s on up. So while he was not officially diagnosed with MPD, he exhibited many narcissistic traits. So some of the above have like strong correlation with narcissism, and some were actually diagnosed with it. So we do have to take that into account. But just like us, you know, with our people, there's times you can kind of tell that somebody most likely is. And we also have a lot of undiagnosed narcissists because they don't like to go to therapy, or they can manipulate and lie their way out of that diagnosis. So that's something to take into consideration. But the famous criminals that are psychopaths, we got Ted Bundy, another serial killer, and we'll talk about what the difference is between psychopath and narcissism. But he was a serial killer, murdered 30 women at least in the 1970s. Now, he had anti-social personality disorder, and that's often used interchangeably with psychopathy. We got Jeffrey Dahmer, who was a serial killer. He murdered 17 men and boys between 1978 and 1991 and was diagnosed with that ASPD, antisocial personality disorder, and borderline personality disorder. So when you add on the comorbidities or the traits, or even just some of the mental illness, it can cause people to do some pretty horrible things. We have Charles Manson, leader of a cult, and committed a series of murders in the late 1960s. He had that antisocial personality disorder, and he was known for being charismatic, and he also did have a very manipulative personality. And Eileen Wuornos, I want to do a video on her. She was a serial killer. A lot of times it's men who do it, and she was one of the few females. So men and women can both have mental illness. They can both be whatever, basically. But women are usually a little different in the type of crimes that they commit, as far as in bulk, like personality stuff. But she murdered 7 men in Florida. She's the one I haven't done her yet, because there's something about her eyes. You talk about the black eyes of a narcissist. Her eyes are so dark. And she's a white woman, a little darker hair than me, but kind of close to my skin tone. And usually my skin tone might have brown eyes, blue, green, whatever, but hers are super dark. And I'm trying to see more and more pictures to see how dark they are, because we talk about the dark eyes of the narcissist. That usually comes out during rage, but there's something about certain mental illnesses that change the eyes. And I have yet to see where I can definitively say she has brown eyes, because they're so close to looking black in all the pictures. So feel free to look her up as well. Aileen, and last name Wornus. We have the last one I'm going to talk about is Robert Hare. Now, he's not a criminal, but what he is he's the one who developed the Hare Psychopathy Checklist. So it's widely used to diagnose psychopathy in individuals, and there are 20 things on the checklist. It was developed by this Canadian psychologist, Robert Hare, and we're going to talk about the 20 items on the three-point scale. And it's based on the degree to which these individuals exhibit certain characteristics, such as superficial charm, grandiosity, lack of empathy. And this checklist has been widely used in both research and clinical settings to assess the psychopathy. And he has become one of the most well-known, widely used tools for assessing the disorder. So what is on this Hare personality psychopathy checklist? Because sometimes, we're lay people. Do we know exactly that our person's a narcissist or borderline? There's also different things that even doctors, like bipolar and borderline, they mix up a lot. And I think they could possibly mix up borderline and narcissism based on the sex. So a lot more women are diagnosed with BPD. There are differences, but some doctors, some therapists sometimes just look at a general and kind of go down that way, and it starts turning into tunnel vision. So are they looking the full scope instead of narrowing it down? If that makes sense. But the 20 items: glib and superficial charm. They can appear being smooth talking, charming, superficially engaging, but they lack the sincerity, and they have a tendency to manipulate others. They also have, number 2, the grandiose self-worth, inflated sense of self-importance, and they can exaggerate their achievements and abilities. They probably jack of all trades. Whatever they need to say that they did, they will say it. And they also have a high need for stimulation, a very strong need. And they need that sense of thrill, excitement, and new experiences. It's pretty much like a need. We'll talk about stimming, which is forms of stimulation, whether it's just tapping or stroking or different little things. We'll talk about that. That can also be seen with other mental illnesses and things going on with the brain. So pathological lying, our narcissist loves to do that too, but the psychopath are individuals prone to lying and deceit and may tell elaborate stories to manipulate or impress others. And we have to remember, psychopaths are born that way. Sociopaths are created throughout their life. So that's a main difference. Conning and manipulativeness. This individual is skilled. They are extremely skilled, can often go undetected, and they are just utilizing people to, I should say, using people to manipulate, or even just to impress others. And The lack of remorse or guilt. This individual will show little remorse or even guilt for their actions, even when they hurt others. So they can know that they hurt others, but they just don't care. And they have a shallow affect with an A, a shallow affect, like affection, very shallow. The individual may display little emotion or even superficial emotions that are not appropriate for the situation. And the callousness, the lack of empathy, insensitivity to others' feelings, to the needs of others, and they can even disregard the rights of people. So, you know, sometimes they might enlist people to go against their morals, or, you know, sometimes out of love or sometimes out of desperation for money. They often have promiscuous sexual behavior, so careful of those one-night stands, and even just who you're with, because they are promiscuous. They can engage in a variety of sexual behaviors without regard for the consequences or the feelings of others. That's why there's a lot of one-night stands out there. Whether you're willing or not, that's up to you guys, but just something to be aware of. Early behavior problems. The individual can have a history of problems such as lying, stealing, truancy that began in childhood. And it's really interesting to see, as I've taught, some kids have gone on to get into the system. And impulsivity, they can act impulsive without considering the consequences. They just do it. They see something, they want it, they go get it, or just, you know, trying new adventures that could, you know, just cause havoc in the family. They can sell everything just to get money to go do something. And they are often very irresponsible. Many of them fail to meet their obligations. They can be unreliable, inconsistent. Another thing they do is they fail to accept responsibility. Same with the narcissist. Many short-term marital relationships can be something to look out for. Juvenile delinquency, revocation of condition release. The individual may have a history of violating parole or other conditions that they are released from prison. So that's why you get that recidivism. And criminal versatility. They can have a wide range of criminal offenses in their history. So it's not like they're just stealing food to feed the family. They're doing whatever and anything. So to sum things up, the final thing I want to talk about is NPD and ASPD, which is also known as psychopathy. ASPD, antisocial personality disorder, is pretty much the new age term. They're both personality disorders, NPD and ASPD, and they share some similarities, but they also have different important differences. So I'll go over the similarities first. They have core traits. They need that admiration, and they have a lack of empathy. And the psychopathy is characterized by that disregard, lack of empathy, impulsive, antisocial behavior, emotional expression. People with NPD often have intense emotions and can be easily hurt or offended. But in contrast, psychopaths tend to have a shallow affect and lack of emotional responsiveness. So they're not as intense emotionally as the narcissist. Social skills. People with NPD are charming, charismatic. Psychopaths can also be charming, but their social skills are often used to manipulate or exploit others. So the narcissist sometimes goes in with good intentions, but since it's so reflected on them, that there's not that connection, because they're putting up that wall, and it just throws everything off and they can get frustrated. So the devaluation stage happens when they have to be nice, and it kind of throws their game off. They don't know what to do. That's a lot of the downward spiral. So it's not our fault. It's what's going on within them. And we try to understand it, but when we do that, they're more likely to leave us. And we're trying to love them. Love doesn't feel normal to them. And so it feels either like creepy or pressure or whatever, and they run from it or give us that silent treatment. So is there a treatment? So there's no cure for either disorder. Treatment approaches may differ. People that have NPD can benefit. They can benefit from therapy if they are willing to go and if they are willing to become vulnerable and tell the truth and self-reflect. They can need how to train themselves to have empathy. It might be that cold empathy that I've talked about, where it's more of a intellectual understanding of it as opposed to a warm, heartfelt, but at least they're replying and keeping things safe. So people with psychopathy may require specialized treatment that focuses on reducing that impulsivity and antisocial behavior. So NPD and psychopathy, they're not mutually exclusive, and that some people may exhibit traits of both disorders. And it's something that, you know, is there a cure for it? It can take years. It's almost like a lifelong commitment for them to stick to not falling back into what their personality is. It's really hard right now. If I told you, you know, just be happy all day, and you're like, hopefully you can. We're getting back to that stage, but it's not something you can just do. And we're going to get there together. But even if you were happy and I told you, no, we're walking around sad for the next forever, you're not going to want to do that. And sometimes they can realize that they're destroying lives. But when they look back, they'll look back like, I might need to change so I don't destroy my life. But they still don't have the empathy towards the other people. So with the lack of empathy and the impulsivity and the lies, that you're going to start to feel unsafe. And I had gone to a Japanese restaurant yesterday, and it was really interesting. There were 4 ladies, and there's this, basically, I guess what it is lard with egg yolk, and you got to whip it a certain way, and then you fry it. And it's basically pretty much all lard. And I guess they said it was like delicious. And I'm like, no, I don't need to eat that. All 3 of them, 2 had to go to number 2 at the restaurant. So 2 didn't even leave the restaurant. And the other one, we were like 5-10 minutes away from her house. And she's like, I gotta get home. I gotta get home. So the things we put in our bodies want to get out. It was not healthy for them because we had pretty much the same meal. I just didn't have that. It was good food. And then they had that like big chunk of lard. And I didn't eat it, and I stayed regular. So when we're putting toxins into our body wants to get rid of it. Same with the toxic emotions, we want to get rid of it. We try to get rid of the negativity through talking, but they shut us down. They won't listen to us. They will spew it out at us. But the issue isn't resolved. And be careful what you allow in your mind is what I'm trying to say. Like, they allowed that food into their body, and their body was like, heck no. But if you put happiness in your mind, you're going to start being happier. And if you allow, you have to deal with it first. There are some 5 stages of grief that you have to go through, but we have to replace what's good. Sometimes too, you know, you have diarrhea or whatever, you got to replace your electrolytes. You know, sometimes you lost more than you should have. So sometimes we have to specifically put things in our mind. And, you know, when you live in the moment, you take everything in, you know, and hopefully you guys were able to look at the beautiful clouds and took everything in, as opposed to just looking at me, that you see all the beauty that's around. And it takes effort to notice everything. So I hope that was helpful. Stay safe. I'm here for one-on-ones. Topic requests are welcome. And I hope to see you in live chat. Hit that like button, help with the algorithm, and subscribe or share if you think this will help someone. See you soon.